picks up clothes from the floor. That's what we want. It's not perfect, but picks up clothes from the floor. Accomplished is picks up clothes from the floor and folds them. Yeah, that would be nice. I can only imagine it. No, I'm kidding. And exemplary, the highest level, is picks up clothes from the floor, folds them, and puts them away. What you're seeing is a value added on each of the steps. This is called a stepwise progression. Now, there are different ways we can design rubrics. We're going to show you another version in a few minutes. But for now, this one will work nicely for us. Let's go down to the other side. Emerging, picks up clothes from the floor when reminded. That needs to be improved. We can call it emerging. Fact is, it's not good enough. You can't stay in emerging for 30 years. You've got to get better than that. That's a very different lesson. My wife and I have two older children, and we also have a 6-year-old. She says she's 6 3/4. We adopted her from China 4 years ago, and what a marvelous change in my whole world. I have one of the best things that's ever happened in my whole life. And what I find, it's not clothes, but it's shoes. When we come in home, she'll drop her shoes off. Doesn't want to wear the shoes in home, which is a good thing. But what I've noticed is that it doesn't matter if it's front door, garage door, doesn't matter. She drops her shoes off. Kitchen, she drops her shoes off. She doesn't mind putting those shoes where they belong. And I'll say, Sally, can you put your shoes over wherever, by that closet? Yeah, she's perfectly happy to do that. But the lesson that she's learned is the wrong lesson. She drops her shoes off, and she waits for me to say, would you put them in the right place? That needs to be fixed. That's not proficient. I don't know if I can fix it, but it needs to be fixed. I've tried.
You might only have 18 years. She might move out at 18 or 19.
I might as well get used to the shoes. And unacceptable is you can't tell where the clothes end and the floor begins. Can you picture it? Can you see the distinction among the 5 levels? When we get to our rubric for the teacher standards, we have to understand and be able to make a distinction among those 5 levels. Here's what I'd like to ask your team to do. Here's your assignment if you choose to accept it. Make the bed. I'd like for you to create your own rubric for making the bed. And all we want is one strand running across. I want you to make the rubric. Proficient, accomplished, exemplary, emerging, unacceptable. Create your rubric with your team. You have about 5 minutes. Go. All right, good. I don't think we need to have every team report out, but I would like to have a few volunteers, if you're willing, to share with us your rubric. Would one of the teams go first for us? All right, St. Martin Parish.
We'll try. As proficient, we said the covers would be just pulled over the bed, and the pillows would be in place. For accomplished, we said the bedspread would be nice and orderly, like it's supposed to be. The pillows are in place, and there would be the pillow shams would be spread out, etc. For exemplary, we said the flat sheet would be nice and tight. It would be tucked in under the ends of the bed, not hanging out under the pillows, the cover. The cover would be nice and tight. The pillow shams would be where they need to be. The pillows would be where they need to be.
Okay.
Nice and orderly. Emerging, we said, well, at least the pillows are on the bed and the bedspread's on the bed. It's just on the bed. It might be in a pile, but at least it's on the bed. For unacceptable, we said that the pillows and the bedspread may be hanging on the floor, maybe all the way on the floor, not necessarily on the bed.
Okay. Can you picture this rubric? Could you go into a bedroom and use this rubric to judge? I'm pretty confident we could all reach pretty close agreement. But when we start applying a rubric like this, and in fact, when we start applying any rubric, we're not all going to completely agree. We're going to be working on inter-rater agreement at a follow-up training. We're going to get into simulations even today. But we're going to be working on this because what ultimately has to happen is that you and I must be interchangeable. It should not matter who is evaluating the teacher, we should be able to arrive essentially at the same point. One reason, Bonnie and St. Martin Parish team, why we can't arrive, or two reasons. One is that we have subtly different perspectives on the words that are here. The English language, I think, has about 400,000 words, none of which are very precise. You take almost any word that we have, and we can have disagreement over exactly what that means. A second issue is that even with a 5-point scale, we're going to find that teacher behaviors in certain categories are right on the border. They don't fall naturally and neatly into one of 5 categories just because we said there are 5 categories. It's really, the reality is that there's more like a continuum of highly effective to highly ineffective. And for example, in this one, between emerging and unacceptable, we have emerging is everything's piled on the bed. Unacceptable for the team is that it's partially on the bed, partially hanging off. Well, how much can it hang off and still be emerging? If it goes a little further, does it become unacceptable? Some of us would judge it emerging, some of it unacceptable. We can live with that. What we can't live with, ultimately, though, is for some of us to look at that pile of clothes and say, hey, that's accomplished. No matter what our experience base is, no matter, even though you and I live that way, we can't say it's accomplished. We have to stick to the rubric. So we can have subtle differences, but we have to arrive essentially at the same point. And when it's on the border, what we're going to find is that some of us will fall on the unacceptable side, some will fall on the emerging side. We can live with that. And there's some ways to build further into rater reliability, and we'll talk about that at a future date. Let's get another rubric as an example. Somebody that has a different kind of design. Okay, St. James, I see you wiggling a little bit.
I know how different it is. We do have a few bullets listed. We'll start from unaccepted, bed not even attempted. Emerging, spread thrown on, obvious wrinkles, the core not on. Proficient, looks good, spread is tough, the core may be on, but if on, it's just thrown. Accomplished, sheets are flat, spread is tough, the core is in place, but not Army approved. Exemplary is sheets are flat, corners are tight, spread is tough, the core is in place, Army approved.
Good. This standard is slightly higher than the St. Martin Parish. The people in St. James make their beds a little bit better than those in St. Martin, because the unacceptable would have been emerging over here. And I don't care. That's fine with me, as long as we agree on the rubric and we can all live with the rubric. What we can't afford is to have a different rubric in place in every school, or administrators in each school interpreting the rubric differently. We have to avoid both of those problems. The only issue that I would contend with a little bit, St. James, is in your proficient category, you said it looks good. How do we interpret it looks good? And we'd have to think about that. We'd have to know what it means. We have to get to the point of being behavioral. Celeste drove me crazy trying to eliminate words like look good. Or us, you actually drove, it wasn't me, it was Jenny. But trying to eliminate some of those descriptors or adjectives, or if we use adjectives, to make sure they're essential and we can interpret them the same way. And that's an important element. Yes, Melissa.
Our table added some components about whether or not they were being reminded or
Okay.
doing things without being told, because I think that's important.
So there's another behavioral characteristic you could have added on top of this. So if we wanted to, we could have taken St. Martin's or St. James with that nice description, and it's a continuation. It's a continuum across those 5 steps. Then we could have added another level, another descriptor underneath it related to each one about never needs to be reminded, sometimes has to be reminded, doesn't matter if you do remind them, some things across there. So we could add another layer, another descriptor. Let me ask did anybody develop a rubric that had numbers in it? Yes. Let's hear the rubric.
Oh, no, I thought you meant ever.
Oh, no.